People often argue about how much the British monarchy costs Canada. Some say it costs almost nothing, while others claim it costs hundreds of millions of dollars every year. The truth is a bit more complicated. Canada does not publish a single line in its budget called monarchy spending. Instead, the costs are spread across several institutions and levels of government. So the most honest way to answer the question is to separate what we can clearly measure from official government reporting and what we can only estimate, because the numbers are fragmented across provinces, cities, and different departments. When Canada refers to the monarch as head of state, the institution that Canadians actually interact with is not the royal household in London. Instead, the role is carried out through Canadian institutions, especially the Governor-General at the federal level and the Lieutenant Governors in each province. The most reliable federal data comes from the annual reports of the Office of the Secretary to the Governor-General of Canada. Those reports include two major categories of spending. The first is the operating budget of the Governor-General's office itself. The second is the support that other federal departments provide to help that office function, including security, residence maintenance, and logistical support. When those numbers are combined across the most recent 7 fiscal years with comparable reporting, the total comes to roughly $350 million. That averages out to about $50 million per year in federal spending. In individual years, the total fluctuates somewhat, typically ranging from the mid-40 millions to the low 60 millions annually. In the most recent year of reporting, for example, the combined total reached roughly $62 million. However, this kind of increase from one year to the next does not necessarily mean that the monarchy suddenly became more expensive. It can reflect things like maintenance schedules for official residences, security requirements, or how different departments allocate and report their costs. When the spending is broken down further, two categories stand out as the largest contributors. The first is security, particularly protective policing provided by federal law enforcement. The second is the maintenance and operation of official residences, including places like Rideau Hall and the Citadel in Quebec City. These costs are significant, but it is important to understand that they are not unique to a monarchy. Any country with a head of state, whether it is a monarch, a governor-general, or an elected president, typically requires security protection, ceremonial infrastructure, and official venues for state functions. There is also a smaller federal program that reimburses some of the official duty expenses of provincial lieutenant governors, such as travel and hospitality related to their constitutional roles. Compared to the governor-general system, however, this program is relatively minor. In most recent years, the total federal reimbursement across all provinces has been well under $1.5 million annually. Where the discussion becomes more complicated is at the provincial and municipal levels. Each province maintains its own lieutenant governor and often supports that office through provincial budgets, residences, and ceremonial activities. However, there is no single national ledger that totals these costs in a standardized way. Some provinces list them as a clear line item in their public accounts, while others spread the spending across several departments. For example, Ontario's public accounts show that the office of the Lieutenant Governor cost a little over $2 million in a recent fiscal year. Other provinces likely have comparable expenses, but because the accounting systems differ, producing a national total requires going through each province's public accounts individually. Municipal costs are even harder to measure. When royal or vice-regal events occur, cities often incur expenses for policing overtime, traffic control, and logistical support. But these costs are rarely coded as monarchy spending. Instead, they appear in general public safety or event management budgets. As a result, while there are individual case studies showing specific costs for particular visits or ceremonies, there is no consolidated national number for municipal spending connected to the crown. One of the most important distinctions in this entire debate is the difference between gross costs and incremental costs. The gross cost refers to the total amount of money spent on Canada's current crown-based head of state system. The incremental cost refers to how much money would actually be saved or added if Canada replaced the monarchy with a different system, such as a republic. This distinction matters because even if Canada became a republic tomorrow, it would still need many of the same institutions and services. A head of state would still require security protection, official venues for state events, ceremonial staff, and administrative support. In other words, removing the monarchy does not eliminate the need for a head of state office. It simply changes the legal and symbolic structure of that office. Different republican models could also change the financial picture in different ways. If Canada replaced the Governor General with an appointed ceremonial president, the ongoing costs might remain quite similar, because the underlying infrastructure would largely stay the same. If Canada adopted a directly elected president, costs could increase due to the need to run national elections and potentially expand security for a more politically prominent role. On top of that, transitioning away from the monarchy would not be a simple administrative change. Canada's constitution requires unanimous consent from the federal government and all provinces to amend provisions related to the offices of the monarch, the Governor General, and the Lieutenant Governors. That means any constitutional transition would likely involve complex negotiations, legal drafting, and political processes that could themselves be costly. Taken together, the most careful conclusion looks like this. Based on official federal reporting, the measurable operating footprint of Canada's head of state system at the federal level averages roughly $50 million per year, or about $350 million over the last 7 comparable fiscal years. Additional costs exist at the provincial and municipal levels, but those numbers are not consolidated into a single national data set and therefore require detailed compilation to estimate accurately. Finally, the amount Canada might actually save or spend under a republican system would depend heavily on the design of that system and the costs of the constitutional transition itself. In other words, the debate is less about a single headline number and more about how Canada chooses to structure its head of state institution in the future.